Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Coastal Sharks Management Board. My name is Chris Bat-Savage. I'm the administrative proxy from North Carolina. I'll be serving as chair. Along with me is staff lead for ASMFC on Coastal Sharks, Kirby Roots Murdy. We'll start by approval of the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll approve that by consent. Next is approval of the proceedings from the October 2019 board meeting. Is there any changes or modifications to those proceedings? Seeing none, then those are approved. Next is public comment on any items that are not on the agenda today for Coastal Sharks. Nobody signed up in advance. Is there any members of the public who would wish to provide any comment? Seeing none, then we'll move on to the next item, which is an update on the implementation of CITES Appendix 2 provisions for Atlantic shorefin Mako Sharks. And with us today from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we have Michelle Turton and Laura Noguchi to go over that for us. So with that, I'll hand it over to them. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Michelle Turton with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm a permits biologist with International Affairs.
Laura Noguchi. I work in the Scientific Management Authority for CITES, also in International Affairs.
And today I'll be talking about the implementation of CITES for the Atlantic shortfin Mako shark. So the Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, I'll just say CITES, is an agreement between 182 member countries, also referred to as parties, and the EU. The US has been a party member since CITES went into effect in 1975. It establishes a legal framework together with common procedural mechanisms for regulating international trade in listed species. The purpose of CITES is to ensure that international trade in wild fauna and flora is legal and sustainable. And how does CITES exactly work? It's by regulating the export, the import, and introduction from the sea of live and dead animal, plants, and their parts. It's for only listed species, so it doesn't cover every species in the world. It's mainly targeted in international trade. It's regulated based on a system of permitting and certifications that can only be issued if certain criteria are met, and must be presented when leaving or entering a country or a member party. So for CITES, there are 3 appendices. Addition of a species to Appendix 1 or Appendix 2 requires 2/3 majority vote of all the parties. Additional of a species to Appendix 3 is a unilateral decision by a listing country. So a little bit more detail about the 3 appendices. So Appendix 1 is roughly around 1,000 species. These are species that are threatened with extinction. There is no commercial trade allowed. It requires both an import permit and an export permit. Appendix 2 is the largest group. There's over 30,000 species listed. The majority of that is plant species. These species are vulnerable to over-exploitation, but they're not currently at risk for extinction. So there is commercial and non-commercial trade allowed in these listed species. And permits and certificates are required for export, but they're not always required for import. It depends on national law that a party may set up, such as the European Union typically requires an import for an Appendix 2. Then there are Appendix 3 specimens. There's roughly around 300 species listed. The purpose is to address legal origin and not necessarily sustainability. These species are protected by at least one country that has requested assistance in helping to regulate those species. So in order for a permit to be issued, there are two findings that are required. There's a legal acquisition, and that finding is done by the Division of Management Authority, and that specimen to be exported has to be legally acquired. The other finding that's necessary for CITES is a non-detrimental finding, sometimes referred to as an NDF, and that's done by the Division of Scientific Authority. And the export of the specimen will not impact negatively on the survival of the species in the wild. CITES Enforcement, there are inspections of wildlife for shipment, there's legal action, investigation, law enforcement, intelligence, working on undercover cases, national and international collaboration, but the main goal is to promote compliance. So now to talk specifically about Mako Sharks. At the 18th meeting of the Conference of Parties that took place in Switzerland on August 17th through the 28th of 2019, it was proposed by the countries listed on the screen. I'm not going to read off all of those party members because there's a large number of them. They proposed for Mako Sharks to be listed as an Appendix 2 item, and that includes both the short fin and the long fin Mako Sharks. So it was voted by the party members and accepted that proposal to list Mako Sharks as an Appendix 2. That came into effect on November 26, 2019. So what are the requirements now that that's come into effect is that for international trade, you will need a U.S. CITES export permit to export it internationally. In order to acquire that permit, you can submit application 3-200-27. That is a permit for export of wildlife taken from the wild. There's a $100 processing fee. If the permit is issued, it is valid for 6 months, and you may or may not need a CITES import certificate. Again, that depends on the different party members and if they have a national law saying that you need an import. If you were to import Mako Sharks to the United States, you would not need a U.S. CITES permit, but you would require a foreign CITES export permit. For domestic trade of Mako Sharks, you do not need a CITES permit. And then if Mako Sharks are caught on the high seas, that's outside of the EEZ zone for the U.S., you will need this certificate. It's a CITES Introductory to the Sea certificate. It will be application form 3-200-31. There's a $100 processing fee, and this Introductory to Sea certificate is valid for 1 year. It should be noted, unlike the 27 for an export permit, which would be a single-time use, the Introductory to Sea certificate will be valid for multiple uses. So you won't need to apply for multiple ones within that year. When can Mako Shark listing as an Appendix 2 be revisited? That would be at a conference of party. The next one will be in Costa Rica in 2022. That is when there can be changes to uplist or delist species. A member party must propose it, and it requires the support of 2/3 of the parties present and voting. And that is my presentation. If you have additional questions, feel free to give our telephone number a call, and also our email address is also listed up there, which this can be shared with your constituents as well.
Thank you for the presentation. Questions for Michelle? I guess you covered everything that you needed to, so that's good. So if no further questions, thank you for the presentation, and yeah, I guess we'll see what happens when this is comes back up maybe in 2022 or no. So thanks again. Okay, next on the agenda is an update from the November 2019 ICAT meeting, and Kirby is going to give a quick update on that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a very brief one-slide presentation. Basically, with short fin Mako, at the 2019 ICAT meeting, it's important to note that the U.S. advanced a measure to generally prohibit retention while allowing limited landings under a total allowable catch if member nations reduce their mortality of short fin Mako by 80%. That's the needed mortality reduction. The U.S. had already achieved this reduction through Amendment 11. During that meeting, there was a report out from the Standing Committee on Research and Science that updated projections regarding basically 2 life generations as opposed to 1 mean generation time that was included in the benchmark assessment. Based on those updated projections, the member countries decided not to make any additional changes at this point to those measures. NOAA Fisheries is looking into what regulations other countries have implemented. And the plan as of right now is there will be no changes to the short fin Mako measures that NOAA has implemented. The next step would be the 2020 ICAT meeting, at which point the discussion around whether to make any further changes would come up at that point. So that would be November of this year. So that's it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, let me know. We also have Guy DeBeck. He was another kind federal partner who stuck around for this delayed meeting, and he's here and can answer some questions that I might not be able to regarding short fin Makos. So thank you.
Thanks, Kirby. Questions for Kirby or for Guy regarding the ICAT update? Got a question from a member of the public. If you can come on up, please, to one of the public microphones and state your name and any affiliation.
Thank you very much. My name is Alejandra Goyenechea, and Senior International Counsel for Defenders of Wildlife. I just wanted to mention that I was present at the annual meeting, so if you have any questions or need more information on what happened at the November meeting, I was there, so feel free to contact me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay. That's it. Okay. Any other business from the board? Okay. If there's no objections, then we're adjourned.
We'll roll right into Bluefish as soon as Dustin gets up here.